Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the EOcafe. I will just start again with the rules. I think you know the rules, but please feel free to keep your cameras on, but your microphones off, unless specifically asked you to join in the conversation. Please put any questions you may have, or any comments you may have, or any information you wish to share into the chat. And then, if it's a question, then I'll try and turn to you to ask the question when the time is right. So today we're looking at understanding cybersecurity challenges and obligations in the space sector. It's our 94th EOcafe, I think, and it's almost exactly 5 years. It's coming up for 5 years since we held the first EOcafe on the 16th of April in 2020, which, as many of you know, was the idea of the EOcafe was we'd had the idea before the COVID lockdown, but the idea was that during the COVID lockdown, it gave people a chance to continue to see each other and continue to exchange. This week is somewhat reminiscent with the market turmoil, the market heading all over the place, which of course it was doing at the start of the COVID lockdowns and the COVID crisis. No one quite knew what was happening or how it was going to work out. So that was 5 years ago. Today, in our whole personal life, in our professional lives, we rely on computers and the internet. And the EO sector is no exception, even more so. It is based upon digital data. And digital threats to all of us, personally and professionally, are becoming more and more commonplace. So the question is, what can we do to protect ourselves and our businesses from these threats? Which brings us to cybersecurity, which is the art of protecting networks, devices, and data from unauthorized access or criminal use, and the practice of ensuring confidentiality, integrity, and availability of information. There are probably other definitions, but that was one definition I came across. And so to address this subject, I'm pleased we're joined today by Marnix Dekker, who is Deputy Head of the Unit for Resilience of Critical Sectors, of which space is considered a critical sector, at ENISA, the European Agency for Cyber Security Protection, and Cedric Ia from USPA, who will talk more generally about space resilience and cybersecurity from a space perspective, and also about the ISAC that USPA have been developing. So before we jump into the subject, maybe I can just ask Marnix and Cedric just to introduce themselves, tell us a bit about your background and how you've got where you are and what you're doing. Marnix?
What a nice way to start, Jeff. I mean, thanks for having me. Theoretical physics, actually. So high energy physics, quantum physics, quantum decoherence thesis, actually. And then couldn't find a job in the theoretical. I was in Italy, so I didn't. There they didn't hire physicists for any job. So I started programming as the old style .NET, C++. And ran into a PhD on computer science, computer security, and then slowly started to do more and more in security. I did some of the big national identity systems in the Netherlands that they still use, and then I went to ENISA to work on things like cloud security, telecom security, 5G security.
And that was always in the Netherlands? Always in the Netherlands?
Sorry?
Always in the Netherlands?
No, well, the PhD, yes, at Twente University, and I was working, and the IT work, programming work was in Italy, and ENISA was always in Greece. So, about 10, 15 years ago, I moved there, came back to Brussels, but then went back to ENISA. So.
Okay, Cedric?
Yeah, so I'm basically an engineer by training in cybersecurity. So I studied in France. Right after graduating, I went to do a graduate trainee program at ESA, space agency. I liked it so much there that I decided to try to stay in the space sector. So after a couple years there, first a graduate program, then a position as a incident handler, so dealing with incident response, cyber incidents, cyber attacks. I got a position at USPA, which is now I'm on the commission side, let's say, still on the space sector, and currently I'm working on different programs that we manage, ranging from Galileo to space surveillance and tracking, and other small projects that we do. So today, for example, I am also involved in, let's say, more awareness programs or non-technical subjects such as the ISAC. So thanks again for inviting me.
Okay. Thanks both. So, I guess to start, what are the risks through having poor cybersecurity? There are many risks, some more serious than others. We have the question of malware, which can infect a system, an attacker breaking into the system, using it as an attack tool for others. It can be simply for theft, credit card theft, or personal information theft. And a particular risk that seems to be becoming more and more prevalent is the blackmail, the encryption of data, and then the demand of a ransom to unencrypt the data. For EO businesses, there is perhaps also a more specific issue of attacks based on the operating system, on either on the ground or in the satellites themselves. So denying the business the ability to operate the assets. And this, of course, is exacerbated by the increasingly complex and menacing geostrategic environment, where there's the spectre of state actors committing or encouraging cyber attacks in one of the many forms, where satellites really are considered as a critical infrastructure. So it seems very timely that we should be addressing this subject today. ENISA has just published a report on the space threat landscape, looking at what's going on. You might be interested to read that. And ENISA is the European Union Agency for Cybersecurity, as I mentioned earlier. And there's a statement about working together with key stakeholders to strengthen trust in the connected economy, to boost resilience of the Union's infrastructure, and ultimately to keep Europe's society and citizens digitally secure. And I think that's taken from your website, Marnix. In response to the new perceived threats, the EU has introduced several cybersecurity requirements through legislative and regulatory instruments. There's the NIS2 Directive, of which we should hear more. There's the EO Space Strategy for Security and Defence, and it is highly likely that security and resilience will be a key pillar of the future Space Act when that starts to move again. So let's try and deepen our understanding of all this. And so I'm very happy to have two experts with us today. So Marnix, maybe just very simply, tell us about ENISA and the role of ENISA and what you're doing, because it's much broader than space.
Well, I mean, of course, we work within the EU, so we're there to support 27 member states. So we're not like the CISA, the US cybersecurity agency. We are more of an enabling agency for the different national agencies. So a lot of the work we do is creating a network of CSIRTs, bringing them together so that they can exchange stuff, making sure that the maturity of all the CSIRTs goes up. And similarly, when it comes to critical infrastructure protection, we work with the authorities, the 27 authorities on, for example, telecom security, or 27 authorities on energy security, really trying to bridge between those, make sure that the rules are a bit harmonized, that everyone is taking the same, a similar approach, is up to speed. That is our real really our mandate. And in practice, what we do a lot, of course, is to when the Commission issues a new policy, of course, we try to influence that when they're writing it. But then we're really in between the legislative text and the industry standards. That's where we kind of sit. Authorities very often they want to give guidance to companies about what to do. And they are a bit hesitant to point directly to a standard, an ISO standard or something like that. So usually they want something that is a little bit more generic, a bit more neutral. And so we are very often in this this bridging role between what the legislator wants, which is usually an expression of what the citizens and the state wants, and then how companies can implement that.
So you're sort of following research and technology in the area of cybersecurity and providing guidance to the member state centers, or
not so much research, but very often we grab what is state of the art in the industry, and so what is usually our role is to at member states level, at least, we try to grab good practices from some member states that are more advanced and try to highlight them and say, look, Sweden has done this on I don't know, they have a way to distribute power generators across the country, and that's a good way to keep the IT going. Maybe other countries can do the same. And similarly, when it comes to working with companies, we try to take the good practices from the front runners and make sure that those things get implemented by the ones that are lagging a bit behind. That is a little bit our role. So we're not so much into research view.
Okay.
More state of
so you talked about working with your key stakeholders. Who are your key stakeholders? Who do you perceive as being your key stakeholders? The member states, the Commission, the industry?
Well, that's a layered question, of course. I mean, we work closely with the Commission, mainly DG Connect. The member states are a bit stronger as stakeholders, I would say. We are a bit more of a member state agency, I would say. But of course, in the end, it's the companies that need to implement. So we work with them as well. But I mean, ISACs, for example, at national level, at EU level, there we let the companies organize themselves, run those meetings, do the information sharing, and then we promote that. Of course, we support where we can, but we're more hands-on with the authorities. I would say the national CSIRTs, the regulatory authorities. That's where we are most because they lack the knowledge. They're usually not so strong. They have much more legal background, so that's where we really come in. I mean, for me, it makes no sense to try to explain to Vodafone what they should improve in terms of security. I mean, they know much better. But to try to give a bit of power to a national authority that has a feeling something's wrong and wants to ask some more technical questions, that's where we step in and help so that they understand better what's going on.
Okay, Cedric, we've had USPA a couple of times in the EOcafe, and I think I'll make the assumption that most people on the call know USPA and know what you do, but maybe it's just worth saying a few words in relation to cybersecurity. And of course, thinking your first mandate was related to Galileo rather than the EO sector, and that really your origins were in Galileo, where you have a very direct role in the security of the system. So maybe it's worth just sort of talking a little bit about USPA's role in that respect.
Yeah, I think a lot of people might be already, especially here, familiar with the operational role that USPA has on the different space programs that we manage. But it's also important to note that one of the main role that we have is also to ensure the security monitoring of the space programs, and to ensure also as well the accreditation of its different components, the different elements. So it's we were involved in the review of the designs. So on a cybersecurity standpoint, we're
Mhm.
involved as well on the operation of this security monitoring, as I said. So we can really follow from the design down to the building of the different chains and evolution of the systems, and to the operation. So we're at a very privileged place, I would say, to ensure the safety and the resilience of the space program.
Yeah. Okay. And that's really quite direct in relation to Galileo, but less so in terms of Earth observation, where you're acting again in a sort of more advisory role,
Um,
supporting
so
role.
yes, of course, the mandate of the agency started with Galileo. It was then extended to different other programs.
Mhm.
I'll cite maybe EGNOS, for example.
Yeah.
Um, Now, however, we're getting more and more responsibilities on programs such as Copernicus. Um, I cannot go into the details of what we provide, but there are teams now that are studying different evolutions for Copernicus.
Okay.
I think as well, since the different space programs were identified as of strategic interest to the European Commission, um, the need to have USPA, and in general the need to have more cybersecurity applied to them has increased, given the geopolitical context that we're
Yeah.
facing right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So, Marnix, let's come back to the threats. For the space sector broadly, the aero sector perhaps more specifically, what are perceived as the main threats?
Yeah, I think it's really important that you started by speaking about threats and now get back to that as well. I mean, it's easy to get lost in all the policies and
Mm,
all the initiatives and so on. In the end of the day, we are dealing with threats, daily. And I should also mention, I mean, there are some cases. I mean, let's put it like that: the space industry, especially the big players like ESA and UISPA, they have very advanced security capabilities. Their systems are top notch. So in that sense, it's a bit of a strange sector. Of course, we don't have, like in the health sector, where we have pretty large organizations that have no idea how to secure the devices. So that is a bit different. And I should also say that, for example, if you compare satellite communication um, to ground-based telecommunications, for example, there's a lot of threats that you don't need to deal with, right? You're not going to get a flood in space. You might get a solar storm, but I mean, there's a lot of things that happen on the ground, wildfires, other things that have impact, and so in many cases with satellite communications and stuff, you are actually you don't have certain threats. But um, I think you mentioned a few ransomware, DDoS attacks. Of course, I think supply chain attacks are going to become more big of an issue. And what you're
mhm.
seeing now is that attackers, so companies are getting more mature in terms of security. So that means that it's harder for attackers to get into the networks, and they're now trying to go via the suppliers. Um, and these are often smaller companies. Maybe they have one logging tool or one small thing that they sell to customers, and the attackers have understood that if they compromise a small supplier with 10 FTEs, 15 FTEs, they maybe have one security guy or girl, then it's much easier for them to get in. And once they do, they get a couple of customers in one go. So that is added bonus for them. and for companies that are making use of those products, it's really hard to spot these kind of attacks, because the software gets installed. Maybe there's already a backdoor prepared inside, and so it completely bypasses your SOC and your detection capability. So for sure general good practice around segmentation and not trusting any node in your network, even if they are, if they're your nodes. That's some good practices there are really needed, and generally a shift, I think, towards more supply chain attacks. Now, Russia was mentioned, of course. That has put things a bit more on edge. We see stuff around subsea cables. We saw, of course, the Viasat case. I think famously, the CISO of Viasat said I might want to start deploying a zero trust network, which goes back to what I just said about segmentation and not trusting your nodes, even if they're inside your network. But one thing I wanted to mention as well, I mean, you spoke about satellite systems being up and running and ground stations and so on, and that is, I am sure that those infrastructures are pretty well protected. But when it comes to those smaller suppliers, small companies that are delivering maybe one piece of radar equipment or one piece of observation equipment, these are quite small companies, very often 10, 15, 20 people. They're really focusing on their product and research. They are not aware that they are a hot target for nation state espionage. And I think we can all remember the Snowden reports, when there was, I think, this satellite company in Germany that was completely unaware that they were completely compromised by I think that was the NSA. But the Chinese, of course, are generally all over the place, and especially in aeronautics. There's a lot of knowledge to be stolen, and there I think, we need to be much more careful. This is a very strong part of the European economy. We have a lot of knowledge there. We see almost every month we see news about Chinese hackers stealing the blueprints of Airbus and stuff like that. And if that continues,
I hope not every month.
Well, I mean, it's pretty often, or ASML, the chip factory. I mean, it's really regular, and there we risk losing. They're going to eat our cheese, and in the end, when Europe is no longer competitive because others have similar products, that's going to be a big risk for the union going forward, I think.
Yeah, I mean, in your report, I think you've got you identify sort of 4 categories. You have physical, economic, social, and legal. Does that reflect also onto the space sector, or is that perhaps more space sector in the hardware sense, maybe? Is that relevant?
They're difficult to say that. For me personally, I would say what is most relevant for the space sector is to start helping the smaller entities, the smaller companies that don't have the resources. I think our focus should be on making cybersecurity easy for them, give them as much support as possible, help them with response, help them with detection, because we cannot. I mean, it's easy to write down cybersecurity requirements. But it's much more difficult to implement it, and I think the general mistake in Europe has been a little bit that like I say, we speak a bit bad about companies and we say they should just do it, all this cybersecurity, but we forget that it's only for very big companies that this is feasible, and for the much smaller ones it's just a long list of things that they cannot implement. So we need to switch towards supporting them, taking things out of their hands. I mean, ISACs are a good idea so that they can learn from others, but maybe we have to go even further with technical support. Maybe we need to move towards automatically scanning smaller companies. We need to do more. There's some interesting work being done by in the Netherlands that I'm aware of. ASML, this big chip machine company, they make the ultraviolet lithography. It's highly tricky, of course, this technology. And what they're doing, they have circles of suppliers where the closer you are to the crown jewel, the more support and the more oversight you get. And that is all run by ASML, the company. So those kind of models, we should start to maybe apply that also to the space sector. But maybe Cedric has other views on that. I mean, well, that would be my.
Well, yeah. I mean, support to small companies. That comes. Where does that fit within ENISA and USPA? Is that a USPA role where ENISA advise, or ENISA convene and USPA sort of spread and share knowledge? How does that? Where is the support for small companies? How does it work?
On USPA side, the interaction with the small actors in the space sector is quite limited, at least on the cybersecurity point of view. We're mainly operating the space program from the European Commission. Now, I think we also realize that, as Marnix said, that one big issue in this ecosystem is how to tackle cybersecurity at SMEs level, when the resources are quite limited. And I think everyone also knows that when you have a space program, more often than not, your contractor or will have a subcontractor, and they will have a very, very large supply chain, which makes it very hard to have a good oversight on your surface of attack. It's very widespread. You cannot enforce your security requirements everywhere. So basically, that's the idea that pushed us to start this EU Space ISAC, and for this we had a great support from ENISA. On how to set it, how to run it, and I'm sure we'll have more time to dwell on it. But as our main duties were not directly in contact with the small companies in the ecosystem.
Marnix, anything to comment there? I mean,
No, I quite understand. Maybe ESA is doing more with smaller companies. Maybe they're doing more in terms of research. I can understand WISPA is dealing more with, indeed with bigger companies in the end. But yeah, in the end, of course, I think it's everyone's concern. The market of players, or at least of suppliers, for the space sector is quite big in Europe, and there's a lot that we can do, and I think the member states and everyone has understood how strategic space is. It's no longer this kind of fringe niche thing where, okay, a few people have a satellite connection and everyone else is doing terrestrial. No, I think we're now seeing how critical and strategic it is, and not only for resilience of society overall, but also for simply economics and keeping the high-paid jobs in Europe. So yeah.
So small companies online or in the EOcafe this afternoon, you would point them to their national centres. Is that the response? What would they do?
Small companies. For sure. I mean, most authorities at the moment, and most cybersecurity agencies are focusing on how to make it simpler for the smaller companies. And when it comes to collaboration between us and WISPA, what you touched on, I mean, we would try to make a simple baseline, that is rather horizontal, and then that's where WISPA can then, should they want to make something more space specific, say, okay, we start from this baseline. There's a few sectorial requirements that we want to add, and move from there. But that, I think, is a bit our focus. I think the time will come again when we are going to focus again on the bigger entities and the bigger companies. But at the moment, I think the realization also with the NIS2 was that it was not enough to only focus on a limited number of very large organizations in a country and make sure that they are secure. I think we all realize that is not going to work for two reasons. Those organizations they're too few, and if there's only one organization that implements the NIS directive, then it's hard to find consultants and guides and so on. So the Commission and the member states, they realize we have to tackle this much broader. Because it becomes very difficult for even big players to comply or to implement security if all the smaller companies around them are struggling. So now it's really the moment where we're focusing more on supply chain, a broader scope of the NIS2, trying to bring everyone a bit more up in terms of maturity. And I think eventually we will see some more initiatives later on about how to deal with the really critical companies. So in
Okay. So in terms ISAC, Cedric, what role do you envisage ISAC playing in this?
So I think the main role of the ISAC is to offer a platform or a space where entities can discuss between each other.
Okay.
And when I say entities, I'm talking about private entities mainly. So our idea when launching this ISAC, which we chair with the European Commission, so we're both co-chairing this, is to foster a space where private entities can bring topics that they would like to talk about and discuss it between themselves, because as you said, Marnix, very earlier in this talk, we have big entities that are old timers in this ecosystem, and they have the resources to deploy hundreds of cybersecurity engineers, and they're already quite mature on this topic. But you also have this new ecosystem of SMEs in Europe that do not have the capabilities or do not even have the awareness on cybersecurity. So it's very important, for example, to propose a space where these smaller entities can learn from the bigger ones, where everyone can share their return of experience and improve the overall maturity of the ecosystem. But I think it's also important to note that it's a very nice tool to get feedback from the actual industry, because, for example, I'm working in a public entity. We have a lot of public partners, and public partners also have a very leading role, let's say, in the space ecosystem, because they produce big orders, they launch big space programs, but they don't have this point of view from the smaller company of what is really challenging them on cybersecurity. So, for example, you were mentioning standardization. It's also nice to be able to create requirements that you know will be possible to apply to SMEs. So you need this feedback, you need this exchange of experience from the different actors in the ecosystem.
Okay, so I understand that. What form does this take? Is there an online forum? You have physical meeting, online webinars explaining.
Yeah, so
helping
for our space ISAC, it's a bit of both. You have regular meetings to just have like a general assembly of all the companies coming, tackling the big subjects. Well, running the ISAC is in itself a big subject, but we have like on-site meetings. So we organize them at conferences on the sidelines to make sure that for all the attendants that will be present, they travel for a space conference. I think the last meeting was the EU space conference in Brussels, and we also have a side meeting where we can discuss. And we also do it sometimes on a remote basis or hybrid basis to allow everyone to attend. We also organize regular workshops. We have created different working groups to tackle specific subjects, and these working groups will gather more or less regularly every month and a half, every month. Depends really on who is attending, because again, we're chairing with Commission this ISAC, but we're not responsible for the outputs or what priority we give to the subjects. We really want to leave the industry, the small actors as well as the big actors, to decide between themselves how they want to organize this discussion.
Yeah, sometimes we make the analogy with squash. So there's like a squash court, and if you go there, you can book a slot, and you can get a racket maybe and some balls. But that could be the role indeed of an authority to kind of make sure that that the court is there, but it's the players, it's the industry that has to play the game, and you see many settings where indeed at the start an authority is there to give them some tools and so on, but later they step back and they let the companies lead and choose their discussions, and often at the start it's a bit more strategic, and the technical more sensitive discussions, they come after a while when the trust is something is a bit higher. And maybe these things are also just bilaterals. I mean, when they know each other and they've seen each other a few times, then it's more easy for them to pick up the phone on a Friday afternoon, like, hey, I'm seeing my system shaky, and what's going on? Did you see this before? That kind of stuff, you will not see it in the minutes of the Isaac, and you will maybe your boss will ask you for KPIs, but you will not. That kind of collaboration is something that is really important to build, and you will not so easily find the tangible, the measurable impact. But we know that this is how it works.
Trust is very important, I imagine, and sort of confidence that I think that certain issues are not shared or are not exposed. So that is an important factor. Maybe we'll come back, but I wanted, before going to one or two questions which are appearing, I wanted to come back to the directive, because the NIS2 directive and the space strategy. Directives and commission documents normally place obligations. They're directives, so they're directing you should be doing things. What obligations are inherent in the NIS2 and the space strategy? What obligations on companies that you are envisaged?
Yeah, space strategy, I don't know, that maybe it's for Cedric, but for the NIS2, I can say, and I will not speak about NIS1, because there's only NIS2 at the moment. But so there's three main pillars, and indeed it's a directive for the member states. So it's not a directive for companies. It's important to understand this distinction. So they ask at the three pillars. So they ask member states to have national capabilities, things like a national authority for each sector, a national strategy on cybersecurity, a national CSIRT to help with response, a national crisis management framework, and a new thing, the national vulnerability disclosure framework. So that is essentially making sure that in each country, an ethical hacker that finds a vulnerability in a system is not prosecuted, but is guided to the right channel, and so that the bug or the vulnerability they found can be addressed in the right way. So that is, I think, really cool that the Commission is so fast with that, and I think even in the US, protection for ethical hackers or whistleblowers, whatever you want to call them, is not so strong. But in Europe, this is now coming. So if you, in France, for example, if you go directly to ANSSI with your vulnerability, you will be protected from all legal mess. So that's quite nice, I think, actually. In the Netherlands, we had a portal where you could put your vulnerability if you found it, but I believe the first one that used it got indeed sued by the company that was affected. So it's not so easy to get that going, but it's important that it's done. So that was the first pillar, the national capabilities. Now then there's the second pillar around EU collaboration. So there's three main mechanisms for that. The cooperation group, the NIS cooperation group, is more for strategic matters. They made, for example, the 5G toolbox, which puts rules in place on high-risk vendors in the 5G networks. Then there's the CSIRT network, that's for technical exchange about threats and incidents. And then there's EU Cyclone, which is only activated when the incidents get very big. It's a more crisis management body. And then the third pillar is the part that companies get most excited about, is the supervision of critical sectors. So this is where the authority steps into a sector and says, look, here are some requirements that you have to implement. And then there's three aspects to that. There's the management responsibility. So that explicitly states that member states should hold the C-level of companies accountable for the measures that were taken. And they might even remove someone from their job. So if a CEO or a CISO hasn't taken the right measures, they could even be banned from doing that work in the future.
Okay.
And there's security measures, of course. So based on a risk assessment, they have to take appropriate security measures. And then there's the incident reporting. So if something does go wrong, you need to report about significant incidents to the authorities. So that's roughly the 3 pillars of the NIS2. Yeah.
Okay. Let's open up a little bit. I've got a few more points if we can have time later, but the first 2 questions are more asking for clarifications or validation of assumptions. Wolfhard, you were the first one, as is often the case, to put a question into the chat. Wolfhard?
Didn't mean to be the first one, but anyway.
It's okay.
And sorry, my camera has a problem here. But anyway, yeah, the question on that I was trying to put up is more of a practical one. Looking at all the new small satellite constellations, including Copernicus contribution missions that are going into more than just land cover monitoring, going into national security, or going into, for instance, prospecting for mining companies. That was the reason for my question. If I look at those, are there special areas for cyber attacks, special parts of this overall satellite system constellation to be wary of, like, for instance, tasking? If you look at reconnaissance, from a reconnaissance background, just monitoring the tasking of satellites is extremely important, not only to governmental agencies, but also to private information, should I say, traders. Are there special areas to be wary of, and what satellite operators should implement special cybersecurity measures to encounter those?
I think that there's multiple questions relevant to this, and for example, the EU is trying to develop some kind of space situational awareness capability. So in terms of tasking, or in terms of having a good oversight of what is happening in space, there are efforts to be more aware of, well, let's say, satellites that would try to intercept communications towards your satellites from one very specific country, for example. We also, I mean, I think depending on your business model and what service you provide from space, you might be exposed to different attacks. As you clearly identified, of course, if you're providing satellite imaging, then some actor could try to access your fleet to get more accurate data, or more updated data. If you're a manufacturer, then you can be a victim to IP theft, or so it really depends on what your business is doing. And I think whether you're an SME or a big actor, you will be targeted, or you can be targeted or expected to be targeted, but for very different reasons.
Okay, thanks. The next question was for Tani Dougal. For Tani, I hope that's the right pronunciation. You're asking about the scope of NIS2 and the application. Do you want to explain a bit further what your thoughts are?
Yes, hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
I just, well, maybe my question is a little bit more on the legal side and not so much on the practical side. But I was just wondering about, as you said, Geoff, the more practical, the scope of the NIS2 directive as far as the space sector is concerned. From what I understand, it only involves, let's say, control centers, ground-based operations, not the space sector in general. And I was wondering if perhaps you could confirm this assumption or not.
I am not going to go into legal matters. The attackers don't care where the law ends. I can assure you that there's no big red line written on the pavement that says no further. Our directive stops here. So we try to stay out of those kind of legal issues as much as possible. Of course, when the Commission makes policy, there are all sorts of cans of worms and implications where they try to so at some point you need to make a delineation, of course, but I can't really help you there. What I do know is that much of the satellite communication part is covered under the telecom framework, and that I would think is what is it, 90%? I mean, maybe I'm exaggerating here, but I would think that's almost 90% of the space sector anyway. So that all that part is under the telecom regulator, but who, of course, for them it's not even a focus space. So that is a bit of an issue. So I think, and then they had a specific carve out in the NIS2 around indeed ground-based stations and control centers and so on. I would think that the space law, if it comes, will clarify that a bit more. And I mean, that's maybe a bit strong to say, but perhaps on the NIS2, it's good to look at the general principle and the general concept. It's very much about protecting society and the state and the economy overall. It's not about compliance, or it's not about individual rights, or this is really about keeping the union secure. Look a bit at the general approach, which is not any kind of strange security. I mean, if you do ISO 27001, you should not be surprised about anything we're asking here, and risk-based as well. So again, that should be bread and butter if you're doing cybersecurity. And then I would perhaps for the details about what's in scope and what's not, I mean, I would probably advise you to not spend too much time on that, because as I said, attackers will exploit that, and I think the space law will clarify that part a bit more. That's my hope, at least.
You talked earlier about supply chains, and I mean, most companies will.
It's a good example, yeah.
As pointed out by Fontani there, will have contracts with ESA. They'll have contracts with framework program with the Commission, as well as other direct contracts, some even with USPA. Are there obligations that flow from that?
I can speak. I mean, from USPA side, and I would expect from ESA it's quite similar, but on certain contracts you will have security requirements, and you will have requirements on the infrastructure, on the service level agreement, or you will have as well security requirements that you will need to apply in things that you design, that you procure, that you build. So yeah.
Okay, thanks. Desiree had a question which, Marnix, I think you've answered in the chat. So I'll skip over that. Please, Desiree.
The bug bounty, I think. Yeah, that was a nice question. Bug bounties programs are interesting. We encourage that. But yeah, of course, a company should not rely on people hunting for bugs to secure their software. It's probably good to have it, but you probably want to take a more solid approach to issues with your software, I guess. Not excluding bug bounties, but it shouldn't be your only thing. Like, okay, I'll just publish a bad product and I'll wait for someone to earn a mug or a T-shirt. That's probably not the right approach.
Okay. Desiree, did you want to develop anything further on that? I see you've got a comment, very technical comment later on.
Yeah, maybe I can add. This concept of bug bounty comes from traditional software companies like Facebook, Google, and so on. And obviously, the goal is not to publish a software that has bugs, but we do know that as soon as the software gets out, there'll be people incentivized to break it. I myself realized that some of our cryptographic algorithms are sometimes either outdated or maybe not following some latest developments, but obviously not in the very highly secured areas, but in some that are relying on, for example, IoT devices and so on, where the level of security is relatively low. Therefore, I was wondering, instead of waiting for people to submit, like ethical hackers, to submit their findings or vulnerabilities, will there be a process that is automated and incentivizing them to actively help us strengthen our security? I got my response. So,
well,
yeah,
I mean, I'm too quick. The European Parliament did a bigger program called FOSSA in the past around open source. That there for sure, there's not a big company behind those libraries. So there you can imagine state to step in and say, okay, we are offering some money to whoever finds a bug in SSL, for example. That these, I mean, I'm not going to say, I mean, hackathons, bug bounty programs. I mean, anything you can do to get a second look, other ideas like, oh, okay, we didn't think about this way of hacking systems. I mean, for sure, security, and I think Cedric agrees. I mean, security, it's all about getting more eyes to look at your systems and your processes. It's really about that, getting an extra pair of eyes, another pair of eyes, another pair of eyes, and you'd be surprised after the third or fourth iteration, there's still someone that comes up with new flaws and new issues. So I don't want to speak bad about hackathons and bug bounty programs. I just wanted to clarify that the National Coordinated Vulnerability Disclosure Programs is a bit of a different, that is more the work that we're doing to try to make sure that there is an exception in criminal law for those for that kind of ethical hacking, which requires a bit of a, how do you say, you need to speak with the police department and the Ministry of Justice to explain that there's also good people trying to hack systems, but that it's a bit of a philosophy change.
Okay. Emmanuel, I think you're sharing information rather than asking a question, but do you want to just elaborate?
Yes, good afternoon. Indeed, as I wrote, I was happy to listen to Marnix for the second time. I had the pleasure to listen to him last December at an event organized by Systematic and De Gaulle France. And anyone interested in this presentation at this event could access it through the link I put in the chat. And then both De Gaulle France and I made 2 short articles in French, unfortunately, that I put as well on the chat. And thanks to EOcafe and Earth for organizing this topic, which is totally underestimated, I think, within space and Earth observation.
Yeah, yeah, I think you're right. Okay, thanks, Emmanuel. Any further questions, please? Just pop them in, or anything I've missed, give me a jog. But in the meantime, I guess we've given a lot of information. You've given a lot of information here. Fundamentally, I guess it's down to what do companies need to watch out for, and what can they do. In terms of the ISAC and organizing the forum for exchange, where can people get information on that? Where can they keep track of what opportunities there are to exchange, or to learn from others, or to flag particular issues, even if they're not flagging them directly, but indirectly by engaging on a topic? What sources exist?
For the ISAC, you can Google EU space ISAC, and you will find either the website of USPA or the website of the Commission of DG DEFIS, and you will find all the instructions on how to contact us or how to apply if you desire to do so. I would really invite all the companies present here to apply if you haven't. Even if you think you're mature, or if you don't think you are, you will have always something to learn or to exchange on this platform. And I think it's good to remember. Yes, it's as Emmanuel said just now, it's a very underestimated topic, I think, because space was always focused on more on safety rather than security. And as well, I think everybody has to remember that security in itself is not the point, because we're all working in companies that do not produce security software or security. We do it for a purpose, so we have to do it smartly. We can't spend all our money on security, and we have to learn from the mistakes of others, if possible, on how to tackle this subject, how to choose the best solutions. We're talking about bug bounty. It can be there are no silver bullets. You will not find one solution that will help you. You need to pick here and there and adjust. So I think, please, if you think that this initiative can be of interest to your company, start the process. Contact us. You can just send us an email to discuss. We'll be gladly accepting meetings to present our initiative.
Okay, great. I think I think we identified that there are many companies which are already members of the network, but so others are encouraged to join and find colleagues, find partners, find others there. And as you say, it's underestimated until it happens, until it's too late, and then suddenly it becomes a real crisis.
Yeah, I wanted to say something about ransomware. I think, and I fully agree with Cedric. I mean, we're doing it for a reason. I do think that espionage attacks are a bit underreported in general, and I think there's many companies also in the space sector that are fully compromised. They're just not aware, and that of course has big long-term impact on the economy. And you mentioned ransomware at the start, and ransomware is essentially cyber criminals with a piece of malware. Now, if you are ransomware, the good thing about it is that it's highly visible. So if there's no, there, you've been hacked, and so ransomware is almost like a nasty way of making sure people start to take security more seriously. And I would even argue that ransomware is a way for us to see what is the level of maturity in companies. And how do you say, if you cannot defend yourself against organized crime groups, you're lost against nation state hackers. I mean, that's another level. So in that sense, I think we should be careful to put ransomware at the top spot. In the sense, yes, it's a good way to get your maturity up, but there are more difficult attackers out there that we should also protect from. So yeah.
That's a good place to end, I think, with that message. We've got to the end time. I was just going to invite you both, if you have something final to say. I think, Marnix, that probably was your message, but if you have anything else that you wish to add now, and Cedric, and then we'll close the cafe.
Well, on my side, I'll just reiterate that do not hesitate to reach out. We're not competing on the security domain. Like a lot of companies, they will compete on the service they provide, on I don't know, refinement of the image that they can get. But we're not competing on cybersecurity. We're all, well, not victims, but we're all the targets here. And if we can gather and exchange and form some kind of a front, we'll have a better chance. So, yeah.
True, and don't forget, the authorities in this sense are your friend. I mean, in that sense, NIS2. Sometimes some consultants, they compare it, like they say it's the GDPR for cybersecurity, and I always react. This is not about compliance. It's not about fines. Also, ANSSI, the French cybersecurity agency, said it very clearly. It's like, we're going to focus on the carrots. The stick is already out there. The cyber attackers, the ransomware, and so on. There's no need for us to impose fines or something. If you're doing cybersecurity because of the law, there's something wrong. Either you're not aware of the threats, or I don't know. But these are we're in this together, indeed, as Cedric said, and the authorities and are really your friend in this. So.
So to everyone, join the ISEC network and find out what's going on and raise your company awareness of the issue. I think that seems to be the key thing coming out of this today. Thank you both very much for joining us. It's been an interesting discussion. As I said, a very important topic, underestimated. Hopefully that in a small way we can at least raise some sensibility to this as an issue, and hopefully people can react. Excuse me. So thank you both. Thank you everyone who's joined. There's just two last messages to anybody who is in the industry. Please fill in the industry survey. We need the data. The data is needed for representing the industry and the sector to public authorities. This data is very much appreciated. So please do take the time to fill in the survey. If you can do it all, that's great. But even if you're able to provide some information, that's already useful. And then please feel able to join us. The Expandio annual ERSC conference will take place in Brussels on the 11th and 12th of June. We'd like to see you all there. Please register now, and look forward to meeting you and talking with you there. In terms of the EOcafe, next one in 2 weeks' time, 24th of April. We'll be talking with the organization representatives of Red Clara, which you may know is undersea cable link to Latin America. It's looking to open up new opportunities in Latin America for digital services, of which EO, of course, is an important possibility. So come and learn how you can take advantage of that link to develop your business in South America. At which point we'll close down the EOcafe. As regulars know, we turn off the recording. Everyone's free just to join in, open up a microphone and just say something. Marnix, Cedric, if you want to stay, you're very welcome. If you want to skip off, that's fine. We finished the sort of formal EOcafe, and so now we have the sort of the informal part of the informal EOcafe. Thanks again.
Thank you for the invite.
Thank you, Jeff. Great.